Garland, always a pleasure to see you. I've got to ask this first question. Forgive me. I take no pleasure in it. It's not in any sense intended to hurt the people of the United States. But I read a story today that inside the White House, there's a very steadily fast-growing feeling that President Joe Biden is, and I quote, deteriorating fast. If that's true, and I'd like your view on whether it's true, what kind of particular problems does that pose your country at a time when they're on a more or less war footing with both Russia and China?
Well, particularly the problem it poses is that there is behind Joe Biden, there is a bit of a battle going on between several factions, several neocon factions. You know, I've said many times in America, we have a battle between the war hawks and the ultra hawks. And if Joe Biden, sadly, as much of a propensity as Joe Biden has towards militarism, currently he falls into just the war hawks category. So that would be a considerable crisis, because the question would be who would come out ahead in the event that he was no longer able to preside over the empire. Certainly those who are looking at Kamala Harris feel that she's somewhat of a hollow shell, and that she would not be really party to that battle going on between the neocon factions, that she would likely simply follow the dictates of the winner.
Help us with the Constitution. At what point, if Joe Biden doesn't accept that he has to shuffle off the scene, at what point does somebody act, and how do they act? And if Kamala Harris is the number two, if Joe Biden leaves the scene, who then becomes the number two? How is that person chosen?
Well, we've got in America, it starts with the 25th Amendment, which is a constitutional amendment which allows the cabinet of the president, of the sitting president, to, if they come to the conclusion that the president is no longer able to perform his or her duties, they can then go to Congress. You know, there's an administrative procedure through which they can move with Congress to force the person to vacate the seat. At that point, Kamala Harris would, of course, be the president, and she would be allowed to, let me change this. Theoretically, she would be allowed to select the whoever her vice president would be. But in the same way,
authorized by no one, just by fiat, no one would have to validate that.
No, she could in fact choose who her vice president was. But that's why I said theoretically, because in the same way that many people here believe that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who were both unpopular even in their own parties, were selected by the elite ruling class, many feel that, you know, the discussion for the ruling class is someone like a Pete Buttigieg. And if you think it's a train wreck now, that would be, you know, the bitter end of the party. I mean, he's so connected to the intelligence community that there would be no confidence whatsoever that we had an independent
Tell us more about him. Not many of us on this side of the pond, at least, know anything about him. He did run for the nomination, but he didn't come close in the end. But I do read that he would probably be Kamala Harris's pick for VP.
Yes. Well, a couple of things about him. He was the mayor of a small town in Indiana, a town of about 100,000 people. Well, they consider it a city, but it was, you know, about 100,000 people. He kind of overnight became a star, and he was the kind of star that was pushed by the people in power, because he was a top-down star in that the news media, you know, all of the Washington Post, the New York Times, all the powers that be declared him a star, but he didn't have the commensurate support from the electorate. So he's a selected star. He's gay, and he's married. He's currently the head of transportation, and he really has been doing a Joe Biden in that he's been missing in action most of the time during some pretty significant crises that are related to his area of expertise.
It ticks a lot of liberal boxes, that team. A black woman president, and a gay man as vice president. Is that what that's all about?
Absolutely. It's about creating a Benetton ad, not a competent team of leaders. I mean, clearly that's where the Democratic Party is now. They're about putting the right, making a nice picture and saying, look, we've checked all the boxes. And I think it's intentional because, again, if we get back to the battle going on behind the scenes within various factions of the elite ruling class, I don't think they want much more than a person there who looks the part so that they can enact their policies through them. They want a conduit for power, and that is precisely what Pete Buttigieg and Kamala Harris would be.
I think a phrase is born there, a Benetton ad, rather than a presidency. I'll be surprised if that one doesn't fly. It's what we call a zinger, Garland, and we've come to expect those from you. Okay, so the midterms take place this coming when? In the middle, in May, is it?
The midterms take place, but just about a year. We're right about a year out. It's 2022, the midterm elections, and currently the view is that the Democrats are going to get crushed for any number of reasons. Of course, not the least of which being the lack of confidence in the Biden administration to address economic woes. Of course, his stumbling and bumbling and not appearing to be really having control of the helm. The circumstances have not worked out well.
Garland, he's not in control of what comes out of either end. If the Prince Charles's wife is to be believed, because he loudly, how shall I say, erupted out of his backside in front of her, which is something she's used to from the horses, but not usually from the President of the United States. So, I mean, I don't know if you saw Peter Sellers' last film, Being There, where Chauncey Gardner, inadvertently stumbles into being the President of the United States. The more I look at Joe Biden, the more like the Peter Sellers character, Chance the Gardener, he looks. So they can't be serious about him leading them into midterm elections, which currently look like a train wreck.
Yeah, well, the problem that our elite ruling class has is that they don't have another alternative. And, again, with his health problems, with his issues, with his mental competency, there's a question whether or not he will be able to hold up. He certainly won't be able to go on the stump. He certainly is unable to, to do the things that a president normally would do to support his party leading into a difficult midterm election. They put Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, et cetera, the usual figures out in Virginia for the Virginia race, and they lost anyway. They have no coattails. So the Democratic Party is in a lot of trouble. And subsequently, since they are the ruling party right now, the United States is in a lot of trouble.
It seems to me, therefore, and I got a whiff of it with the indictment of Bannon, Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's former right-hand man, maybe current right-hand man, who knows? These things go up and down. It seems to me the Democrats' only hope is to criminalize and make impossible a second Donald Trump presidential run. But if they do that, social peace in the country will be very much endangered. That's how it looks to me.
I think you're right. But even then, I think they are so weak. Remember, there's a guy down in Florida named Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is very popular amongst the Republican base. So the Republicans actually have a few people that are popular enough amongst their base that they can get a good turnout from their base. The Democrats don't have that right now. No one that they would be comfortable with. The people that the Democratic Party would more than likely support, the ruling elite class of the party certainly would not accept. So the Republicans at least still have some faith in the party amongst independents and amongst some of the potential candidates. The Democrats right now, they're in trouble because, as I said, here's their big problem. The people that could be competitive in the Democratic Party are not acceptable to the ruling elite because they're too populist. They wouldn't simply be puppets for the billionaires.
But would Trump allow a surrogate like DeSantis to, as it were, appear in his place?
Well, what I think is more likely, if Donald Trump is healthy, if he's ready to run, you are correct in that the intelligence community and the powers that be would make some attempt to try to stop him. I don't know what that they could do constitutionally. I don't see an option. And again, here's the other option that I would predict: an easy win for the Republicans would be a Trump DeSantis party. DeSantis is from Florida. Excuse me, ticket. DeSantis is from Florida, a very important state. He could deliver that state because he's very popular. And of course, Donald Trump being, being up in years, as is Joe Biden, he would certainly give the appearance that he was ready to take the helm, unlike a Kamala Harris or a Pete Buttigieg.
And how's the liberal media taking all of this? They're stuck, aren't they? They were the choir for Joe Biden, and yet they must gaze upon this current situation with dismay.
Yes, and after Afghanistan, there was a difficult time period because the mainstream media is also, the voice of the empire. So they were very angry that Joe Biden pulled out of Afghanistan. So they attacked him for a while, and now they're trying to recover, regain their feet, and decide how to not so much support Joe Biden as to stop Donald Trump and to stop the Republicans from winning. And I think they've thrown in a towel. I think they understand 2022 is not going to go in their direction. And going into 2022, there are many economists who see the potential for a recession, for bad economic times, which would then, we're looking at, significant majorities in both houses for the Republicans. And might I add, investigations into Hunter Biden and other things that could be even more damaging for the Democrats and Joe Biden.
Good point. I'd forgotten about Hunter Biden and his laptop and his business relations in the Ukraine. Speaking of which, the United States administration made a most peculiar announcement this last few days in which they warned the European powers, the European Union, that Russia was preparing to invade Ukraine. Now, of course, Russia has no intention whatsoever of invading Ukraine. This is a perennial canard which is trotted out, but it had two peculiarities. Why were they warning Europe? Did they imagine that the mighty armies of the Netherlands and Belgium, Italy and Greece are going to fight Russia? Why would they warn the Europeans of this? And secondly, as it will quickly be found to be entirely baseless, are they now so reckless that they'll throw out these kind of baseless accusations, even if time will show that they're entirely false?
Well, in this instance, I don't think that they said that for I'll put it like this. I don't think that this was for the Europeans. I think it was internal. I think it was to get this out into the news, to get this out into the media so that they could frighten the people of the U.S. and frighten the people of Europe, and that allows them to continue the things they're doing with military buildup, to continue the money laundering with feeding various very expensive weaponry systems into Ukraine. So yeah, I think if you read this as they really meant it, or was it true or false, I think you missed the fact that this is internal and this is to continue to prime the American public for the absurd activities, and of course the European public for the absurd activities of NATO and the U.S. Towards Russia.
Garland Nixon, as always, fascinating to get your perspective. Thanks for joining us.